Their Excellencies, the Right Honourable Dame Patsy Reddy, Governor-General of New Zealand, and Sir David Gascoigne.
Thank you, everyone. Please take a seat. I ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā iwi o ngā hoewha, tēnei aku mihi mahana ki a koutou. Nau mai, haere mai ki te whare kawana, ki ora tātou katoa. I specifically acknowledge our kuia Rānui Ngārimu, our kaumātua, Joe Harawera, tēnā kōrua. And it's a very great pleasure to host this investiture ceremony and bring together 11 honour recipients, along with their family and friends, to recognise the contributions they've made to our country. As Governor-General, I have the authority and the privilege, on behalf of Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen of New Zealand, to hold an investiture for her and to confer honours, royal honours, our nation's highest honours, on individuals who've made exceptional contributions to their communities and our nation. Hosting an investiture ceremony is one of the most important duties I perform as Governor-General because it enables me to recognise and thank them on behalf of all New Zealanders for helping to make Aotearoa New Zealand a better place to live. Some recipients have a national public profile, others will be well known in their own communities. But what they have in common is the economic, cultural, social or environmental impact they've had on our nation. Catriona McLeod will now read the citations for each recipient and invite them to come forward and receive their insignia. As they come forward, I invite you all to join me in thanking and congratulating them for their service to our country.
Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Ms. Helen Heffernan of Wellington for services to health. Helen Heffernan has worked in the field of antibiotic resistance for more than 40 years, primarily working at the National Health Institute and the Institute of Environmental Science and Research. Her microbiology and surveillance work has been crucial in underpinning the introduction of vaccine programs against diseases such as Haemophilus, influenza type B, pneumococcus and meningococcus. She developed the national cold chain standards for vaccine management, making vaccines safer for New Zealand recipients. She led a team that studied and reported on the spread of many challenging infections, thus helping medical clinicians reduce the rate of increase in antibiotic resistance in New Zealand. Ms Heffernan has been a member of numerous committees and advisory groups and has represented New Zealand at World Health Organization workshops and meetings. Ms Helen Heffernan, please come forward. Mr Bruce McKenzie of Masterton for services to the cattle industry. Bruce McKenzie is a cattle farmer who runs the Mongahina Hereford stud in Masterton with his son. He's been at the forefront of genetic development in the primary sector in New Zealand. He pioneered the importation of different livestock breeds, as well as materials such as frozen embryos and semen, with the aim of improving herd quality. He refined the Charolais breed, creating the red Charolais. He introduced a valuable new cattle breed, Speckle Park, into New Zealand. He was involved in importing fallow deer genetics from Europe. He's been a leading cattle judge at major events in New Zealand and internationally. Mr McKenzie has been involved in many coaching schools organised by the Royal Agriculture Society of New Zealand. Mr Bruce McKenzie, please come forward. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Mrs. Avis Rishworth of Lawrence for services to women. Avis Rishworth served as President, Secretary, Treasurer and National Conference Delegate of the Tuapeka Mouth Women's Institute. She held several positions at the South Otago Federation Women's Institute, including South Otago Federation President. She was elected to the New Zealand Women's Institute National Executive Committee, where she chaired the Education Committee. She was Vice President of the National Executive and elected as the National President. She was a member of the Centennial Committee for NZFWI. She has chaired the Barbara Wood Trust and is a life trustee of the Mealing Estates Trusts. She was the Women's Institute representative to the National Council of Women. Mrs. Rishworth was a trustee of the Otago Rural Support Trust and the secretary of the Century Farms New Zealand Organising Committee. Mrs. Avis Rishworth, please come forward. Reverend Novae Vailao of Porirua for services to the Samoan community. Reverend Novae Vailao is CEO of the Congregational Christian Church of Samoa, EFKS New Zealand Trust, which he established to liaise with government to address issues impacting New Zealand Samoans. He's been church minister of the Porirua EFKS for 22 years. He helped to create the Atamu Porirua EFKS Incorporated and the Aonga Amata Porirua, community-driven organizations that help young Samoans. He's been a member of the Ministerial Advisory Council for the Minister of Pacific Peoples, the Ministry of Education's Pacifica Talanoa Group, and the Ministry of Health's Pacific Advisory Group. He was chair of the Porirua Pacific Church Ministers Group and is a member of the Wellington Samoan Whaifio Church Ministers Group. Reverend Vailao has been involved with Taula I Whanua Trust and the Central Pacific Collective. Reverend Novae Vailao, please come forward. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Mrs. Jo Dawkins of Tauranga for services to horticulture. Jo Dawkins joined the New Zealand branch of the International Plant Propagator Society, IPPS, in 1980, working in a variety of administrative and governance roles before becoming the New Zealand IPPS president. She became New Zealand's International Director of IPPS and later International President of the Society. In 1995, she co-founded the Tupuna Quarry Park, which was transformed from an old quarry into a major horticulture and floriculture tourism destination in the Western Bay of Plenty. She's been on the Parks Committee for the past 25 years, including time as president. Mrs. Dawkins continues her hands-on involvement with the park 3 days a week. Mrs. Jo Dawkins, please come forward. Mr. Takamaki of Gisborne for services to martial arts and Māori. Takamaki is a former New Zealand representative martial arts athlete. He founded the Rangataua o Aotearoa Māori Martial and Cultural Arts, ROA Club, in Gisborne and has led the club for 43 years. ROA was formed as an avenue for young Māori to be included in community events, with fees kept low and classes primarily taught in Te Reo Māori. Mr. Mackie is Vice President of the New Zealand Muay Thai Federation. He oversees the security team for the Rhythm and Vines Music Festival, with proceeds enabling his students to attend international tournaments. Mr. Mackie played rugby for Poverty Bay and Horota and coached the Horota Premier team. Mr. Takamaki, please come forward. Mr. Don O'Connor of New Plymouth for services to motorsport. Don O'Connor joined the Taranaki Motorcycle Club Committee in the 1970s, quickly becoming the club president. He was secretary and treasurer of the New Zealand Speedway Board and was instrumental in helping Speedway New Zealand become an autonomous body for both cars and motorcycles. He is currently an appeals panelist, solving disputes within the sport. In the 1990s, he ran the New Zealand Ducati dealers race team. He supported and sponsored a number of successful New Zealand motorcycle racers at international events. Mr. O'Connor served as secretary of the Taranaki Car Club and has often shared his expertise with the community and sponsored local competitors. Mr. Don O'Connor, please come forward. Mr. Will Recorby of Nelson for services to conservation. Will Recorby has worked to build and maintain tracks, plant native trees, and eradicate weeds and pests in the Richmond Hills. He's provided his expertise in construction to redesign the Department of Conservation's predator tunnels. He established and assisted with trapping lines in the Tasman district. He's worked on projects that have seen the return of natural biodiversity in the Waimea Estuary, the Aniseed Valley, and the Richmond Hills. He served on committees to promote environmental and conservation education with local schools and scouting groups. Mr. Recorby established the Conservation Volunteers newsletter as a resource for groups involved in the restoration of native bush and wildlife. Mr. Will Recorby, please come forward. Your Excellency, to receive the Queen's Service Medal, Mr. Norman Crawshaw of Westport for services to the community and sport. Norman Crawshaw has been an organiser, coach, umpire, statistician, secretary and historian within the Buller Cricket Association. He's organised jubilees and tournaments and written 2 cricket history books. He's held several roles within the Buller Rugby Referees Association and was a National Rugby Referee Assessor. He's Secretary-Treasurer of Buller Grey Power and has been Buller Delegate to the Grey Power New Zealand National AGM and at Tasman Zone meetings. Mr. Crawshaw has been Secretary of Buller Citizens Advice Bureau and the Coal Town Museum Trust and a member of the Westport Returned and Services Association Scholarship Award Committee. Mr. Norman Crawshaw, please come forward. Mrs. Corrine Gray of Mount Maunganui for services to choral music. Corrine Gray joined Papamoa Beach Women's Institute in 1981 and has served as president. She was secretary of the Tauranga Federation and helped establish the Tauranga Women's Institute Choir. She was a member of the Oriana Singers and a vocalist and accompanist with the Tauranga Civic Choir. She volunteers at Bayswater Retirement Village, teaching singing to people with dementia and staging musical productions with general residents. She teaches singing through the University of the Third Age. Mrs. Gray is an organist at St. Mary's Anglican Church in Mount Maunganui and a member of the Tapuki Lyceum Choir. Mrs. Corrine Gray, please come forward. Mr. Suresh Patel of Dannevirke for services to the community and sport. Suresh Patel was the chairman of the Dannevirke Chamber of Commerce on 2 separate occasions, originally helping to prevent it from going into recession and then driving the association's growth. During his time as chairman, he revitalized the Dannevirke Christmas Parade. He was the chairman of Dannevirke Cricket Association and president of the Central District's Indian Sports Club. He is a delegate and selector with the New Zealand Indian Sports Association and has helped to organise New Zealand Indian sports tournaments. Mr. Patel has been a coach, referee and member of a number of sports clubs and teams. Mr. Suresh Patel, please come forward. Your Excellency, the investiture is concluded.
Our honours system is our nation's highest public affirmation of outstanding individual achievement. It reinforces values and behaviours that sustain our communities and help our nation thrive and prosper. And these include service, courage, manaakitanga, and the pursuit of knowledge and excellence. By using their talents to make ours a better society, whether by service to their communities or by their leadership in diverse fields of endeavour, or commitment to excellence in their own area of expertise, our recipients have set a fine example. To the recipients, it's been a privilege to hear your stories today. You've demonstrated determination, commitment and compassion in your daily lives. Your actions and the stories we've heard reflect the spirit of the words of another great New Zealander, Sir Paul Callaghan, when he said, "What greater sense of fulfilment can there be but to make a difference to the community in which you live?" It's hard to make a difference in New York, but here everything you contribute makes a visible difference. On behalf of all New Zealanders, I thank you for helping to make Aotearoa New Zealand a better place to live. Whether by dedicating your lives to the public good, achieving distinction in your chosen field, or inspiring others with your leadership. Please wear your insignia with pride, knowing that your contributions are recognised and valued, and others are inspired by your example. Thank you, everyone. That nearly brings to a close the formal part of today's ceremony. But before we have our refreshments, I wonder if I might ask you to stand and join me in singing our national anthem.